Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Tuesday morning, a little bit of a pullback or breather in the markets today, at least for the price of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining stocks, with most of them in the red during morning trading. That's okay because we've got a number of big press releases or production updates to cover in today's video, including IREN, Cipher, and DMG, along with some news from Bitdeer. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, you guys. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these four stocks, your thoughts on their December production results, and outlook into 2025. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Tuesday morning, unfortunately, our DMG interview is moved to Thursday. That's okay because we have a number of production updates out this morning that we wanted to cover, in addition to some news from Bitdeer. So, Anthony, a little bit of a breather or pullback in the price of Bitcoin, now sub 100,000, and the miners here today. How are you feeling Tuesday morning?
You're feeling okay. Normal day. Bitcoin up and down a little bit, yeah, no, it's a just normal day. Lots of updates out, so we've got plenty to go through.
Yeah, most definitely. A little bit of healthy consolidation never hurts. The last 2 days of trading, especially last Friday, were monstrous for the sector. So it's nice to see those RSI levels coming down into a little bit more breathing room. Anthony, when we look at the mid-morning market update, a couple of interesting observations here. We mentioned Bitcoin has pulled back a few $1,000s overnight. Obviously, most of the miners are red as a result, but there are a few highlights standing out right now. Soluna on the positive side, leading the team in green, and then Bitdeer on the inverse, down 9%, following yesterday's negative red day as well. So a little bit of context we can add to Bitdeer, and great to see Soluna really shining early in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, Soluna had a bit of a challenging last 3 or 4 months of the year when the share price had reached over $8 during the year and then started to pull back. But, you know, I mean, we had John on the podcast numerous times, and he talked us through the projects. They'd had funding approved and allocated for a number of them. They've broken ground on Dorothy 2. They've got pipeline of energy to tap into, significant pipeline. And they're going around business in the right way. So they had a good first 12 months under John's leadership, and we'll have John on the podcast next week, and we'll go through that. But it's good to see the share price pull a little bit back. We'd like to see it go a little bit further as well, just to make sure they've got that buffer zone there, keep in line with the Nasdaq rules and everything. And John will obviously highlight what 2025 will bring after from an operational point of view, a very successful 2024.
Yeah, that's great. We're really looking forward to that interview. Another big interview we have tomorrow, Bitdeer and Bit Digital, a double header. So on the other side of things, Anthony, Bitdeer in the red today, you were able to dig up an SEC filing talking about an ATM submission last week, actually. So this gives some context or clarity as to why Bitdeer's been under some pressure.
Yeah, so Bitdeer have submitted a prospectus and the document submitted via the SEC, and effectively they've put out a shelf offering of $1 billion US dollars of up to 1 billion of shares can be allocated. Now, those shares will be allocated as and when required, so it's not a case of all 1 billion will be liquidated into shares straight away. But we do know that Bitdeer have got significant amount of sites that are coming online in 2025. They've also got the Seal Miner, which they're producing, Seal Miner A1, Seal Miner A2, developing Seal Miner A3 and A4. So that requires, a lot of funding as well. They're moving into the AI space, the AI project in Singapore is successful, so they're going to drive that further out there. So they've got a lot of things doing, and obviously to do everything that they need to do, they're going to require funding. So they've put out, effectively an amount that probably covers, most of that near-term strategy. And we'll get Jeff to talk us through how that 1 billion is going to be utilized over the next year or so, as we see their strategy play out.
Yeah, most definitely. I was doing some research going through the Bitdeer presentations and news today, Anthony, and you're right. Their portfolio of assets or land is just massive. It's a laundry list. So no wonder they needed some funding there. It's going to be interesting to hear what Jeff says about the ATM versus convertible. We obviously heard the convertible notes. There's been a lot of paper put into the market recently over the last few months. It seems the market is having trouble digesting those convertible notes. We've even seen MicroStrategy shift gears and focus on some other financial levers. So never a dull moment in the Bitcoin mining sector. Now, another interview we have coming up, I just mentioned DMG was supposed to be today. That's been moved to Thursday. They've now come out with their monthly production report as well, Anthony. So we won't go through this extensively as we have Sheldon and Steve on in a few days' time. But did anything stand out for the month of December?
Well, obviously their production's increasing because they recently increased their hash rate. It's now at 1.68 as an operational hash rate. I think it's slightly over 1.7 in total. I looked at a previous update this morning. I think 1.72 is their total hash rate. Produced 32 Bitcoins. That's just over a Bitcoin a day. They sold 49 Bitcoin. So we know they've been buying new machines. And they've got another order in to grow that hash rate to about 2.1 exahash. Should be completed in this quarter. And that was a target they wanted for 2024. So a little bit behind that target, but 2.1 by the end of Q1 will get them into a reasonable state of play with a very efficient fleet. If you look at their efficiency at the moment, 23 joules a terahash, and that'll improve as these extra miners are added to that. In terms of HODL, they've still got 406 Bitcoin. So, for a company whose market capitalization is extremely low, I think I looked yesterday, it was about $55 million. They've got, $38 million in Bitcoin as at the December 31st price, which I think was about $93,400. So even at today's price, where the Bitcoin has dropped from about 102,000 this morning down to 98,000, it's going to be higher than that. It's going to be probably over 40 million in terms of just a HODL. And when you look at the actual market capitalization, not that much more than the HODL. So there's a company that, the market's not really giving them a sense of value. But we'll get more from Steve and Sheldon on the podcast that will highlight some of the plans they've got going forward into 2025, see what they can deliver. They've got a lot of irons in the fire, so there'll be lots to talk about.
Yeah, most definitely. They've also got the hydro miners or the liquid cooled chips coming in as well this year. So a lot to talk about there. Not to mention, Anthony, Prime Minister Trudeau has given his official resignation yesterday. We expected that was coming. It has now come. So that may shift the landscape here in Canada. I know there was some restrictions on data centers, expansion of Bitcoin mining facilities. So looking forward to getting DMG's input on that political change as well up in Canada here. Now, moving along, you talk about DMG increasing their fleet. Another one here, Anthony, tremendous growth, especially month over month. I'm talking about IREN, you guys, up 40% in terms of Bitcoin mined month over month from November to December. Absolutely incredible. Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, no, this was a standout update from all the mining companies that we received so far, and we were expecting a big update because They announced at the end of November they got to 28 exahash, which was only 3 short of their yearly total. So we knew they're on track to achieve that total during the month. But in terms of operating, because they put most of that hash rate in towards the end of the month, they only were actually operating about 19.7 as an average hash rate for November. Well, December, that 19.7's increased to 28.1 exahash. That's a 43% increase. An increase in that operational hash rate enabled them, as quite right, as you said there, their Bitcoin mining, taking account of difficulty, which was up about nearly 4% in December. They've managed to increase their mining by 40%, so 529 Bitcoin. Now, IREN do sell the Bitcoin on a regular basis, so they don't have a hodl strategy. But bear in mind, you've got a company here that has zero debt, has now fully funded probably to the next to 50 exahash in terms of their next goal as well, because they've been utilizing the ATM throughout 2024. So they'll have got those orders in place, and they're building out the rest of the facility at Childress to get to that target. So we'll expect them to do that. They've done more than that hash rate in the last 6 months of 2024. So they've got about 19 exahash in the first 6 months of 2025. That should be reasonably able to achieve that, providing the weather doesn't impact anything, because we know the weather can change rapidly in Texas as it's done in previous years. So weather permitting, we know they're going to be on track to achieve that 50 exahash. Other good positive was obviously they increased the power now, so they're fully operating at 510 megawatts. That was 460 at the end of November, so an extra 50 megawatts coming online. Their efficiency for the fleet has remained the same because they've got the most efficient miners out there. So that's still at 15 joules a terahash. That's by far the most efficient mining fleet. And that helps when it comes to mining Bitcoin. That's your energy cost. Less energy is required when you have an efficient fleet like that. And IREN, were probably flag waving the price to mine a Bitcoin in December, because it's now down to $22,799 in terms of energy for each Bitcoin. So that's a 77% margin. That's up from 74% that it achieved in November. So just when we were talking earlier in the year about, what the Bitcoin price would need to be for these miners to start making, a profit in mining, IREN are leading the way in that at the moment there. They're achieving really good rates in terms of the market rate for power, because they don't have a PPA in place. They've also got some revenues coming in from their cloud service, their AI cloud service. That was $800,000 or approximately $800,000 in December, slightly down from the $900,000 they achieved in November. But we know they've got some orders of the H200s coming in. It's a very profitable business in terms of the energy required for this service there. I mean, it's a 98% margin, but bear in mind you've got to buy these GPUs, and they're not cheap in terms of comparison to mining machines. It's a different landscape. So, I don't want people walking away thinking, oh, it's 98% profit. Yes, it's profit on operating, but you have to have the capital initially to buy these GPUs, and obviously the capital to build the facilities that they're in. So when you're thinking about return on investment, you need to take account of, what your costs have been to get to that point as well. And hence, that's why, depreciation is applied in accounts, because it's a real cost. It's a cost of showing what you've expended over the period of the account. So there's a little accounting education for some people that weren't sure.
I have one other accounting question for you there, Anthony. When we see the 98% margin and the 77% for Bitcoin, essentially that's just power costs, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the power cost only. So in terms of their operating cost for mining, they're going to have to pay staff, they're going to have to pay G&A costs, they're going to have to pay legal fees, professional fees. So there'll be other costs there. But what we saw in a recent presentation from IREN is they're obviously drilling down on those costs. And once the facility is completed, when they get to the 50 exahash, obviously the cost going out in terms of the staffing to build that facility, those won't appear every month after that. So that'll start coming down. as we see these sites coming to completion. But yeah, still a significant amount. But I mean, it highlighted. I think IREN highlighted when they do, into 2025, they should be able to mine a Bitcoin at around about $29,000 a coin. So that's allowing there for probably about another $6,000 or $7,000 per Bitcoin in terms of payroll, G&A costs, legal fees, etc., etc. And we're only talking about the cash costs. Once we start adding in things like depreciation, things like stock compensation, that's a bit more challenging. That takes up a bit more of the cost. Then they are true costs. I don't want people walking away thinking that's not a cost. Of course, it's a cost. If you're going to issue stock compensation and issue more shares, that's the cost of the company. It's the cost of the shareholders. And if you're buying, significant amounts of equipment or building sites and there's depreciation involved, there is a cost incurred there. So, but when we look at business running costs, we generally talk about the cash costs involved. You'll hear these terms: hash price, hash cost. Those two really about dollars in terms of revenues and in terms of costs that are effectively cash. So, we want to make sure that the company's viable, but notwithstanding, they've had to get to that position in the first place.
Makes sense. Hence the term cash is king, I've heard before as well, Anthony. Now, another observation, I suppose, here to do with margins. We've heard Sam Tabar originally say around 110. Now, the most recent, I think, is around $130,000 US Bitcoin is kind of that inflection point in terms of the margin or profitability between these two business units. So we want to talk to Sam Tabar about that as we're obviously getting closer and closer to that inflection point. But the other thing I wanted to call out here, Anthony, as we talk about costs associated with each business, one thing to keep in mind, you guys, Bitcoin mining, you don't need a sales team, marketing, anything to do with a client relationship, customer service. All of that is foregone because you either sell Bitcoin into the network or you hodl it. So, Anthony, I just wanted to point that out as well. There are more, staffing, marketing, sales, customer relation, those type of roles and costs on the AI side as well.
Oh, yes, there are. And, those overheads are real overheads. They'll have to pay those, it's still a relatively new industry. So, time will be, to take to adjust to that industry. I mean, if you think about some of these companies went out and bought H100s and now we're seeing, them going and buying H200s, the more up-to-date GPU. Is there still a use for H100s out there? In terms of like comparison to the mining sector, you've got S19s, S21s, T21s. Are miners looking for the most efficient miners? Do they still want to operate? I mean, we were talking to Adam yesterday on the podcast, and he was saying, there's still some of the S19 models that are still profitable, and so is that the same for this HPC AI space as well? So as time goes by, these companies will start to understand the impact of what they're trying to do. But I've said all along, I'm firmly positive in terms of those companies that are looking to go for the HPC hosting contracts, because you don't have to then start outlaying the capital required for these GPUs, which is massively significant in terms of they're very, very expensive, and we're not talking millions, we're talking tens of millions to sort of like to fill these facilities. And so, the likes of TeraWulf, the likes of Core Scientific, if we get an announcement, in the near future from Hut 8 with regards to theirs, those big HPC contracts, I think those are sort of like the way forward. I'm not sort of a big fan of the on-demand service, and on the grounds that you've got too many variables. You don't know how many people are going to take up the service. Are you going to be 100% utilized? I speak to people in the UK who have on-demand HPC services, and they're saying they're roughly getting about 80% uptime. And that's in the UK. We're one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world, and they're achieving 80%. So it sort of like makes me concerned. Then, if you're not getting that full uptime, are you going to get the revenues to pay back what you've initially invested? Whereas HPC hosting, you've got a contract there that says everything in writing. It's black and white. You're going to get paid this, this, and this, and there's your margin, there's your profit. Job done. It's like it's for me, it's like a no-brainer. But we'll get Sam, because Sam's done obviously the on-demand service and he's done contract service. So he'll give a perspective when we get Sam on the podcast this week and talk us through more detail, some of these new contracts they've signed and what they look for in a particular contract. So I'll let the expert in that area talk. That's just my view, not everyone's view. So please don't, shoot me in the comments. It's just my own personal view on what I've seen so far in terms of the potential margins, the longevity of a contract. I think, and I think not many people argue with me, is that Core Scientific deal is still the most outstanding deal at the moment out there.
Yeah, agreed. It's so interesting to listen to the differences of hosting on the Bitcoin versus HPC side, of vertical integration on HPC AI data centers versus Bitcoin data centers. So yeah, a lot of questions for Sam Tabar tomorrow. And again, Bitdeer and Bit Digital doubleheader tomorrow. Now, to bring things home here, Anthony, we have Cipher. We just booked in our trip to New York to the Bitcoin Investor Week. Cipher's based in New York, or at least Tyler Page, the CEO, is. So we're looking forward to going and meeting up at PubKey with some of these CEOs and clients out east. But before we do, Anthony, they've come out with a big production report for the month of December. 232 Bitcoin, so kind of mid-pack in terms of the miners that we cover on the channel, but another consistent month. And this is the year where we start to see Black Pearl and some of these mega sites come online. Should be a very fruitful year for Cipher.
Yeah, I mean, 2024 was a good year for Cipher in getting things ready for 2025. So this year is going to be massive for Cipher in terms of that Black Pearl site coming online. They've actually put some pictures in the monthly update to highlight where they are at the moment in terms of build. And you can see the infrastructure now, already got a number of facilities already built up there. And so that looks like it's coming along really well. In terms of their production for December, they mined 232, and they also managed to get some power credits, which were equivalent to another 2 Bitcoin. So, from their updates, 234, but 2 of those were in terms of power credits, and that will be a reduction in their costs, not physical Bitcoin. In terms of Bitcoin held, they've got a hodl of 1,344, and that gives them effectively a hodl value of about 125 million, so a significant hodl value. They sold 271 Bitcoin. Now we know they've been increasing the fleet. So the fleet's increased to 13.5 exahash this month. That was their target that they set earlier in the year, so they've achieved their target. They've got a nice efficiency as well in that fleet, 18.9 joules a terahash. So again, can't reiterate it enough. You get under that 20, the power costs required to mine Bitcoin dramatically decreased. And bear in mind, when you've got Cipher, you've got one of the companies that got access to some of the cheapest energy out there. So that's a win-win for them. They do generally, year after year, have some of the best margins in terms of mining margins. When we look at staffing and other operating costs, they're probably a little bit higher than some of their peer miners, but their actual direct costs, and when I say direct, it's the mining energy costs. They're some of the cheapest that, in comparison to all their peers. There's only maybe Riot can sort of like compete with them. Core Scientific also have some good margins in terms of energy as well. So, but Cipher are definitely up there. TeraWulf, when they had they had the Nautilus site open, had really good margins as well, but that's gone. And if you saw their update this month, the power costs have started to increase quite significantly at their site. But I like this update from Cipher. They've done exactly what they've said. Obviously they're ready now to start rolling out their Black Pearl data center, in 2025, and we'll get further updates from Tyler as to when that's going to start occurring. But yeah, as I say, a good steady update from Cipher, and let's hope 2025 brings them as much success as 2024.
Most definitely. And we're still waiting with bated breath for that big Cipher HPC AI announcement, which we feel may be coming in 2025 as well. So lots of activity in the market. As we're recording this podcast, Anthony, Bitcoin continues to slide, now sub 97,500. So if you do have any dry powder on the sidelines, you guys looking to average down on any positions, this may be a great opportunity to do so. With that being said, let us know in the comment section below, what did you think of the production results from these three companies and Bitdeer's ATM approach? And be sure to get your Miner Madness 2.0 picks in before the end of the week, as there's only a few days remaining. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.